Honourable Member, Maturia Ture. Tēnā koe, Ms Ture.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker. Tēnā koutou i te whare. Bring on September 20, I reckon. Bring on September 20 so that New Zealanders will finally have the chance to absolutely and without question reject John Key's exclusive Cabinet Club economy, an economy that we've seen laid out in this year's budget. What a disgrace, what a disgraceful budget. And instead New Zealanders will have the opportunity to have a genuinely progressive government of which the Greens would be a part, to build a smarter, greener and more compassionate future for our country, a future from which we will all benefit, not just the wealthy few. Mr Speaker, if this had been a Green Party budget, and we expect in time we will be able to say that with absolute certainty, if this had been a Green Party budget, we would have set out the steps to enable a living wage for every working New Zealander. A living wage for every working New Zealander. If this had been a Green budget, we would have removed the discrimination in the Working for Families tax system that leaves out from the benefits of working for families those families who are most poor. Because don't forget, this budget reinforced the discrimination against New Zealand's poorest children with the criteria on the parental tax credit. But the Greens would remove that discrimination because we believe every child, regardless of their parents' income, is entitled to a good life and a fair future. If this had been a Green budget, we would have implemented our schools as community hubs policy, a dedicated school nurse in every low decile school, free after-school care and free holiday programs for kids so that they can keep and maintain their learning through the holiday periods. A school lunch fund so that every low decile school can provide lunch to their kids as they see fit, whether it's community gardens or working with their local community, devising community solutions to community-defined problems. A school hubs facilitator in every low decile school so that school teachers and principals are relieved of the burden that they face every day in dealing with inequality and poverty with their kids, and instead a full-time person whose job it is to find those social services that will work best with that school community to help remove the barriers that children face every day when they are sick and poor and hungry. Mr Speaker, if this had been a Green budget, we would have a significant investment in safe cycling and walking infrastructure for our kids so that we all knew that our kids could walk and bike to school safely. Who in this country doesn't believe that children should be able to walk and bike to school safely just like we used to in the old days? We were all walkers and bikers to school. I remember walking to school. But parents are too frightened to allow their kids to walk and bike to school these days. And why is that? Because we have not built the separated cycleways that means that our kids can get to their schools every day safely. And we know that kids want to bike and walk to school. We know they want to be with their friends out and about and getting physical exercise. We know it's good to reduce congestion in the morning. A Green budget would have delivered the steps to achieve that for our kids, their safety and a reduction in congestion. Mr Speaker, if this had been a Green budget, we would have implemented the New Zealand Power Solution to bring down the power prices, the power bills of New Zealand households by $300 a year. You know, we know that families are really struggling right now to pay school fees, to pay the power bill, to get healthy food, to pay the rent, to pay the mortgage. A Green budget would have dealt with those problems that our families face every day. And one of those solutions is New Zealand Power to bring down the prices of electricity for families. Mr Speaker, if this had been a Green budget, we would have introduced our Home for Life policy. A Home for Life policy which is about building new homes in this country, a consistent state house building policy to create jobs and build skills for our young people, to build homes for all of those families who need it, to bring in progressive ownership that allows for a person to be able to slowly buy their home from the state over time without a mortgage and without debt, just like many of our parents did through the old, family benefit or the old Mitre state loans scheme. Safe and secure tenure for tenants is another core part of our Home for Life program. We would have eliminated by now those ridiculous renewable tenancies that throw families, older people, children out on the street, and instead bring in secure tenure for renters so that they know that they can have pride in their home. They can invest in their home even if they're renting it, because they know that they are secure in their home and have a right to stay. And Mr. Speaker, we would bring in the warranty fitness and the home insulation scheme so that every New Zealand family would know that their home was warm and dry and safe for them and for their kids. The kind of security that every family needs if they also want to make sure that their children have access to a great education at their local school that they too know is consistent and secure. I guess it's no surprise, Mr. Speaker, that John Key and Bill English in the National Party did nothing for housing in this budget. It is the great and glaring hole at a time of a national housing crisis that John Key and Bill English and the National Party did nothing for housing in this budget. Now, John Key, of Cabinet Club fame, thinks that homes in Auckland are more affordable than homes in London and New York. And he was on radio yesterday talking about how he had lived in these places and he had visited these places overseas, and Auckland was not any more expensive than the homes that he was looking at. Well, I guess it depends on the kind of homes he was looking at, because the OECD actual evidence and research-based evidence showed that in fact Auckland homes are grotesquely expensive compared to these overseas cities. So is that really what we have now? A Prime Minister who will, because of his own personal experience of buying homes in other countries, now believes he knows all about what it means for a young family on a median wage just trying to get into their first modest 3-bedroom home, what that's really like, because this budget proves he does not have a clue. This budget proves that John Key is staggeringly out of touch with ordinary New Zealand families who are facing the housing crisis every day. Now, John Key, will argue that he has been terribly generous. He has, of course, brought down the cost of nails, for example, for those people who might be lucky enough to be able to afford to build their own home. How generous! How, New Zealanders, don't you forget this. Be thankful, New Zealand, because John Key and Bill English have brought down the price of nails for you. That is their great contribution to the housing crisis, bringing down the price of nails, and we better all be thankful and grateful for it, while everybody who's desperate for a decent home is out there scrabbling around to save as much as they can on low wages, while kids are getting sick in homes that are too expensive for rent, too expensive for mortgages, too expensive to heat, poor quality, and making them sick. Be thankful, New Zealand, says John Key, because in his experience of living in London and other places, New Zealand and Auckland isn't that bad. Well, perhaps what we need in this place is a new government that does understand what it's like for ordinary families to have to get by on an ordinary income, who want the security of a home that they can be proud of, who want to have access to a home that's warm and dry and safe and won't make their kids sick, who want the security either of being able to be a tenant for long periods because they have secure tenancy, or perhaps they want to buy that little patch of Aotearoa New Zealand that they can call their own, that is part of the Kiwi dream, so that they know that they will be safe and secure, and so will their kids. Why is that so difficult for this national John Key government to understand? Why is it so difficult for this national John Key government to take seriously and understand that this is a real difficulty, a real crisis for New Zealand families. Because what we have is a government that refuses to even acknowledge that the crisis exists. Green Party will deliver a budget that will deliver for our families after September 20, after the election. Party vote Green. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker.
Paul Goldsmith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My pleasure to speak on this address, and I must say it is rather galling to listen to a lecture from